from the offer price. And how does this play out, you think? I read a lot about it over the weekend, but Musk Twitter's going to sue Musk to do what? To force Musk to buy Twitter, which he clearly doesn't really want to own, not at this price?
Well, so Twitter has to do this. So when they accepted his bid so quickly, that signified they had zero internal modeling or business model that their stock could ever get close to 54.20 ever again. All right. And it's now become clear through this process that Twitter is not a for-profit company. It is a propaganda tool for various governments and special interests around the world, which is why there are so many bots and why they need so many bots. So why they are suing Musk and why they will not win is to mitigate their own damage and the fiduciary responsibility of everyone on the board. There is zero fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder from management and the board to increase shareholder value. Otherwise, they would have been very upfront with this data. They would have pushed it right over. But there's a lot of fishy stuff going on here. So Musk is 100% in the right. They're going to want to try to get a breakup fee, which I'm not sure if it's $1 billion or $3 billion. It's a large, yeah, it's a large amount of money, and for good reason with these deals, because as soon as a takeover is proposed or announced, business really stops in the company getting taken over. So that's why that's put in place. But management is trying to play games here to try to hide the fact of what's really going on under the hood there. Elon, even if he doesn't end up owning this company.
Well, I would argue, and Joe, final word to you, that there's gamesmanship on both sides of this, and that jump in here.
Hey, Jim. You mentioned commodities have rolled over, particularly copper. But when you start looking in the energy space, you still have severe supply-demand constraints. We have seen some demand destruction, but oil stocks and oil has just the stocks specifically have really rolled over. What is your take on that at the moment?
So that, to me, I think the only part of the commodity space that's still going to continue to rally is the energy space. And that's just based on stupid energy policy, particularly domestically, that's choking the supply. So you look at copper, you mentioned copper, which broke 30% in a matter of weeks. That's an extremely rare event. I believe it's only happened twice over about the last 50 years that it moved that much in that short time. One of them was during the financial crisis. So it's a big, huge deal that happened. But the energy thing, that's the missing piece of the whole puzzle. I do think we're going into a recession. I believe that recession can be elongated immeasurably if we don't pivot on energy policy and try to fix that supply part of the equation, which we're not doing very well right now.
Let me move on to Twitter. Shares are down in pre-market trading this morning after Elon Musk announced that he's pulling out of his $44 billion acquisition deal. Twitter's board is planning to take legal action with him. He responded with some memes, including a photo of Chuck Norris playing chess, saying "Chuckmate." What do you just explain what the heck's going on with Twitter and Musk?
So at first it was, Elon doesn't have the money. Twitter's never going to sell. Their stock price is worth so much more. But it only took him a couple of days once that offer was in writing to accept it, which signifies that internally there were no models to say that the stock price could get anywhere near 54.20, anywhere higher, anywhere close, because there's a take private premium when you go ahead and take a company off the market like this. So once that became evident and Twitter started playing games with disclosure, you could see this company was much more of a dumpster fire, and a big part of the due diligence is so you can actually see what's under the hood. And so as long as Twitter goes ahead and gives all this disclosure, Elon Musk is pretty normally on the hook for $1 billion breakup fee. I would say Twitter has continued to play these games with the disclosure, and they are now taking Elon to court to shield themselves from liability, because this company is being run as is essentially a propaganda machine. If the president of the United States, if 50% of his followers are fake, then how many followers on the platform are real and are fake? And the entire valuation of a social media enterprise is your daily active users. And if you don't know how many of them are real and you're consistently lying to the street every single quarter, I don't know how this deal could go through at that original price. If Elon does take it out, it'll be much lower than initially announced.
I also look at it from a free speech perspective, and him not controlling Twitter, him not buying Twitter is a loss for people who thought he would, journalist, not opinion writer, published this, the headline, at 79, Biden is testing the boundaries of age and the presidency. Baker notes Biden is already more than a year older than Ronald Reagan was at the end of his 2 terms. He goes on to report that, that Biden is intellectually engaged, but this is the quote that stood out. Biden often shuffles when he walks, and aides worry he'll trip on a wire. He stumbles over words during public events, and they hold their breath to see if he makes it to the end without a gaffe. We've all witnessed this, but the fact that the Times has written about it in such glaring fashion really shows that everybody's turned their back on this fumbling, bumbling, mumbling president.
I'd say when you read something like this in the Times, they're trying to get ahead of something, which means it's probably much worse than it appears to the American public. And his cognitive decline. Go watch when he announced his candidacy in 2019, and then go watch him speak in the mid 2000s. It is sad and it is substantial. Some other issues with this poll. His strongly approve to strongly disapprove is underwater by 32 points. Okay, Biden's approval rating is headed to the 20s. You simply do not recover from there. And the thing is, the key difference between Joe Biden and Barack Obama is these policies that they're pushing have never been popular. But Obama had a base and was a dynamic, likable politician. Joe Biden is just Mr. Washington, Mr. Swamp Creature, all right? Go along to get along, hit the talking points, and when you get him in a room, he's a great backslapper. That's not enough. Like, we are seeing the worst inflation in 5 decades. We are in a recession now, after spending $10 trillion in stimulus. Like, these things that are previously unthinkable are happening in front of our face. We have an invasion at the southern border, 300,000 people coming in per month, a new Chicago every single year of people we don't know where they came from or what's going on here. This is an unmitigated mess, and he as of now, has the lowest approval rating of any first-term president in the history of the U.S. And you're getting to the point of no return here.
Right. I joked that a while ago that, leave him alone. He thinks Elon Musk is his wife's perfume. But this is no joke. And it's no laughing matter because this impacts every American. Coming up, President Biden. Mike, where is Merrick Garland in all this? This is against the law. Intimidating judges and particularly Supreme Court justices, it is against the law. And the Attorney General of the United States is, doing nothing.
Kagan, this is blatant judge intimidation. Merrick Garland wants these judges to be intimidated. Get in line with our points of view, rule in line with what the left wants, or face, in the case of Brett Kavanaugh, assassination attempts of you and your family. You can no longer live at home. This is disgusting. Merrick Garland has turned our country into a third world banana republic. This is the most blatantly partisan Attorney General's office and Department of Justice we've ever seen. And look, believe me, it was pretty bad when they tried to frame a sitting president as being an agent of the Russian government. That was pretty bad. But I would say this is worse. This is disgusting. And the fact that it's happening while a candidate for governor in Michigan was somewhere in Washington, D.C. on January the 6th, gets arrested while he's running against Gretchen Whitmer, people blatantly threatening the lives of the Supreme Court justices and their family. And I even heard that they pushed the Roe decision so that their kids could get out of school because of the vitriol and dangers that they would face during the school year. I mean, this is insane. The District of Columbia is a banana republic. And if you are on the lefties team, there are no laws, there are no rules. The ends will always justify the means. It is a disgusting state of affairs.
Gentlemen, well said. Coming up, looking ahead to a big week of inflation numbers.
A year.
Mike Lee, jump in here. I always think about that $9 trillion, it's almost $9 trillion balance sheet, which again, all that money printing made the rich, the leveraged rich so much richer, and at the same time really screwed over hardworking Americans. But what say you? Get in here.
Yeah, Barry, great thoughts. I'm in agreement with a lot of what you say. From where I sit, this balance sheet seems to be a continuing problem and will be for decades. I don't know how the Fed allows balance sheet runoff for more than 6 to 9 months, and if they do so, and they continually do so, it's going to be at much lower amounts than they thought. And that being said, I don't know that they really need to run this balance sheet down to pre-great financial crisis levels or even half of where it is, but I believe the growth has to stop. What are your thoughts, and what do you think is going to play out in terms of the Fed balance sheet?
Well, you just hit on one of my all-time favorite topics here around the Fed. Listen, if you go back and you look at what they did during the pandemic, they did 150 basis points of rate cuts, 1.5%, but the amount of securities they bought was the equivalent of 2.5%. So when they decided to unwind policy, rather than directly addressing the balance sheet and the way they eased, they decided to use the rate policy tool instead. And it's going to be very, to use Fed speak, inefficacious, right? So they were trying to avoid a taper tantrum, but in fact, you move the spread of mortgages to swaps or treasuries out to all-time highs. You moved interest rate volatility out to all-time highs. So in effect, they had a taper tantrum, even though they're passively trying to unwind the balance sheet. I would have vastly preferred that they focused on the balance sheet and unwinding those mortgage holdings in particular, because housing, as we just discussed, is the real risk here. So this was just really poor policy in 2021 with the way they did this, and it's really poor implementation or unwinding, tightening in 2022, and it's creating huge distortions. But you're absolutely right. I mean, Bill Dudley has said it'll be 3 years before the balance sheet is back to something like neutral. So huge problem, and it's going to be a drag for some time.
Quick.
Yeah, so they say the left can't meme, and that's because all their arguments are their Overton window has moved so far out of reality that it's so easy to respond with the claims that the left makes. In this case, Twitter is a meme, and it's hilarious.
I just used the GIF of a tire fire. That's my go-to. Joe Concha, Mike Lee, thank you so much. Varney & Company is right now.
David.
Stuart, take it away.
All right.